Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome again to Iowa Prison Perspectives. I'm Sue Hutchins, and I'm the one who facilitates this particular YouTube channel. The purpose of it has always been and remains to inform you, the public, about what actually goes on in prison and outside of prison with people who have been involved in the system. I interview people who have been incarcerated, loved ones who have somebody who's incarcerated, who have worked for the Department of Corrections, and other advocates like myself who are looking for some reform and also to inform the public about the conditions and what happens here in Iowa as far as prison is concerned. This is a collaboration between Living Beyond the Bars, which I am the founder of, Iowa Justice Action Network, which I am the co-chair of, and Iowa Cure, which I am the vice president of. Those organizations cover all the different aspects of prison, trying to advocate for prisoners, looking at legislation, and also Living Beyond the Bars works with families who have someone incarcerated and also reentry. We do a lot of reentry work. Mike Cervantes is the other half of Living Beyond the Bars, and he does the reentry work, just so you're aware. One of the things that I would really like from you, if you are willing, is to comment and let us know what you agree with, what you don't agree with, how you feel about what we're doing here, if you think it's helpful, if you don't think it's helpful. Because the purpose that I'm doing this is to inform you, the public, and to give you a chance to talk and talk about how you feel about prison. I would also ask that you share these videos with your friends, and if you like what you see, please click the like button. I would appreciate that. And so would the people who are being interviewed, because they want to know too what you feel and how you feel about what we're doing. That's a really important part of this. Well, that's the whole reason for this. So please take that into consideration. This evening, we're fortunate to have Amanda, who was the person that I interviewed 2 weeks ago, back to talk about some specifics, to be more specific about the topic that she was talking about, which is people who have been charged with an offense that is sexual in nature. This is the first time I've interviewed had somebody come back and interviewed a person for the second time. And the reason that I'm doing that is because it's a very, very important subject, as are a lot of subjects. This subject really deals with what's happening in terms of the registry, the Sex Offender Registry, and some hot topic legislation that's in the process of being developed. So I feel like you ought to know specifically what has happened with the registry and what happens to people who are convicted or charged. So, with no further comment from me at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda because she has some very, very interesting information to give you this evening. And once again, please comment.
Thank
Okay,
you,
Amanda,
Sue.
it's all yours.
Thank you, Sue. It's a pleasure to be back. Um, I really enjoyed our first talk. We were able to at least dive in a little bit about things in prison and here in Iowa, and a little bit about the registry. So tonight, I want to give the viewers a few stats about the sex offender registry here in Iowa. As of today at 5 p.m., we currently have over 6,888 individuals currently on the Iowa Sex Offender Registry. But that number does not include the over 1,000 incarcerated individuals that one day will be on the registry once they get released from prison. But today I was doing a little bit of deep diving into the registry, and I found some interesting facts that I want to share with everyone today. One of them is that we have 189 females on the registry. The purpose of the registry to begin with was to put all of these male individuals, a little bit older, they had this deviant behavior, they had this attraction to children. It was never intended for women. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to come back today is in a little
Mhm.
bit, I'm going to introduce a friend of mine because she is one of these individuals on the registry, not here in Iowa, in another state. And what makes her story unique is she never committed any crime of a sexual nature, but still ended up on her state's sex offender registry. A couple other stats that I found today that were really interesting. Out of them 189 females,
Mhm.
almost a dozen of them were under the age of 18 when they committed their offense. So the sex offender registry is, when you hear the media talk, our politicians talk, it's all about protecting the kids. Well, how are we protecting kids when we continuously put children on the registry? And what's even more disturbing is our age of the registry, the population on the registry. Today, I found out we had 16 individuals here in the state of Iowa that are over the age of 87, including one individual who is 99 years old. And I know there's been some talk recently about possibly next year in legislation start looking at nursing homes and allowing individuals at the end of their life to be able to go into a nursing home. Because currently in Iowa, the law will not allow anybody on the registry to go into any type of a nursing care. And so then it relies on the family to have to take care of these individuals at the end of their life. And for
And if I
me,
could just ask you, what
yeah,
happens to someone if they don't have family?
that is a good question. We really don't know. Some of them could end up back in prison, um, especially if they got like dementia.
Right.
If they get something that, they're 95 years old and they forget to go down to their local court, local sheriff's department and register, and then they end
Mhm.
up throwing them back in prison for a failure to register. Now, is
Mhm.
that even fair? No,
Mhm.
we know it isn't. And another thing with our current legislation, I want to let everyone know about Senate File 634. That bill right now will double the amount that every registrant has to pay. So everyone on the registry has to pay an annual fee. Currently, it's $25 a month or $25 a year. And if this bill gets passed, it'll double to 50.
And what is that for? What is the purpose of that payment?
The purpose of that payment is basically to help the cost of the registry. So we are paying to have the sheriff's department keep an eye on us as registrants.
Mhm.
And the I don't have today the stats, but I can maybe get that for a future one of how much we spend in the state of Iowa on just trying to keep track of everybody in the state because it costs a lot of money.
Yes, it's
And I
expensive.
know other states are actually sending letters to their legislators. They've sent some to President Trump and Elon Musk because we're always talking about making more efficient government. Once again, this is a waste of taxpayers' money because majority of these individuals do not need to be on the registry. And that'll bring me to why I wanted to do this again. Last fall, I am part of a group down from Florida Action Committee. It's
Mhm.
a group of women that are forced to register. In our organization, the girls are all called Shine Voices. And I want to introduce somebody tonight to everybody. Her name is Tammy, and she has got a story that you guys will not believe. I heard about Tammy's story several months ago, and just more recently, we've actually put a petition up on change.org to have the officials look at her case and get her off the registry. And with that, I want to pass it over to Tammy And Tammy, can you just kind of give us a little background of just what happened to get you onto the registry?
Well, first, let me thank you for taking the time to have me on your show and to listen to my voice, to my shine voice.
Yes.
And so I'm Tammy Goodson, and I'm from Virginia. I've lived here my entire life. And so back in 2002 and 2003, uh, I was going through a really hard time in my life. I was in drug addiction. I'd never done drugs before. I was about 33 years old, but I found myself in a heap of mess. And during my heap of trouble, I lost custody of my oldest son, David. He was 12 at the time. Um, because of my drug addiction, he was found in my home. I want this to be very clear. He was found in my home, and he tested positive for alcohol and marijuana. So they took the child away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And they also placed my other two children with my mother. And my son was so combative that they placed him in the state's custody for a little while. And during that little span of time, uh, the my sister applied for custody to my son, and there was orders against me. I couldn't be near my son, and I lost my custody. I could maintain no relationship with my son. So my sister was awarded custody of my son after a period of time with DSS and a home plan and safety plan and everything. And after my sister had had my son for, I'm just going to minimize it to maybe 6 months to a year, somewhere in that span of time, she was having all kinds of trouble out of him. And I, I at that time did not care because I was in drug addiction. And she had called me one day and she had told me that she thought that my son was having sex with a lady that she actually entrusted, a friend, to babysit for her while she was working, or not really babysit, kind of look after him because he was a troubled boy. This lady was a high school friend. And my sister brought me this knowledge, and I'm like, what do you want me to do about it? I can't do anything about it. There's nothing I can do about it. So one day when I was at my mother's, I happened to see this lady and my son in her vehicle, and I stopped them. And I talked to this lady and I said, I want to know about this. And she was trying to assure me that things wasn't happening when my son was over in the other seat just cussing at me, yapping. I was not supposed to be near the child. Okay. Well, anyway, having all that said and done, I just told my sister I tried to handle it the best I could. And several occasions, my son wouldn't come home. He'd be at her house. And one day, my mother called me in a panic and she said, Sherry's up to her neck right here. She's going to take David Allen and put him out on the courthouse lawn. If you don't do something, he come home and he has a ring of hickeys around his neck. So I thought about it and I thought about it. And I said, I'm just going to go talk to the investigator and the sheriff in Grayson. So I did. I went and got Glenn Height, investigator, Sheriff Jerry Wilson at the time. They're no longer in office here. And I told them what I thought my suspicion was, that my son was engaging in, he was 14 at this time now, so several years passed, year and a half. I said, engaging in sexual activity with a lady above age. I didn't know her age at the time, but she was 26. Um, anyway, the investigator and the cops, they went on and investigated this crime. And they went to my son and they asked him about it. And he told them, yes, he'd been having sex with her. And then they went to her and told her, look, he's already told us that y'all been having sex. And so she admitted to having sex. She was arrested for carnal knowledge of my child. And she was taken to jail. And my son was put back into the foster care system. In the meantime, me and my sister sitting over here thinking, what just happened, because my son was ripped from her home again. But then several weeks later, or maybe a couple months later, they came back with indictments for me and my sister. And they charged me and my sister both at that time with carnal knowledge of the child.
Mm-hmm.
And that was later determined that my sister would get charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor, which was reduced from a felony to a misdemeanor. And my charge was changed from carnal knowledge to indecent liberties with a child by persons of supervision or custodial relation, 182 Code of Virginia, charged with subsection F, which says you knew about a crime, you encouraged a crime, and you failed to report that crime in a timely manner. So my knowledge of knowing about that crime in March of 2003, but failure to report till May of 2003, has landed me on a lifetime sex offender registry. And I hope that answers some of your questions.
So you actually did not, you had no custody of your son. And that's what bothers me this whole story, everyone, is, Tammy's trying to, going through her struggles of, the drug addiction. She lost custody of her child. And yet, when this gets found out that her son was having a relationship with another adult, they ended up charging Tammy for not turning this in soon enough. And my question is, how is she supposed to know about this when she doesn't have custody of her son? And that's where, as an individual, I feel that this is overstepping boundaries of police. And to me, it's like Tammy did nothing wrong. She was trying to get through her life.
If I could just ask, it sounds like, to me, it sounds like the reason that you got charged, Tammy, that is because they said you knew about it in March and you didn't report it until May.
That's correct.
That's the crux of the whole issue for you, is that you knew it for several months. You, as mother, you knew it for several months before you reported.
That is true, but let me point out the fact that I had no custody of the child, and was the initial complainant. I filed the police report.
Well, and to me, I used to work with non-offending spouses, and my husband worked with the perpetrators. And to me, it sounds like in Iowa, you might have been charged with as a non-offending spouse because you knew and didn't report, but that would not land you on the sex registry. I mean, that seems to be the injustice of this.
Unfortunately, in Virginia, that 182370.1, I've done some studies on that. That's like a cesspool where they just put people that they need to put in that cesspool. And I actually qualified under one of the subsections, failing to report in a timely manner. What is a timely manner? Was it the few months in between? Could it have been a year? Could it have been 5 years? I mean, what was a timely manner? And I did do the right thing by reporting, just not as soon as so when my sister made knowledge of this, and I want this to be very clear, in March of that year, she had already reported to social services, quote unquote, to the guardian ad litem, quote unquote, and to my son's probation officer. So they all knew. They are mandated reporters. Why did they not get charged with failure to report in a timely manner? So
yeah.
I'm not saying everything I done in my life was correct, because I certainly failed at a mother. Having my kids in a home where there was drugs and there was guns and there was alcohol, and I made some very poor choices. And I will say this, this same state that has me on this registry, I have my civil rights back. I have custody of my grandchildren. I have fostered children in the state. The social services that put here, that's not even kin to me. I have fostered women waiting to go to residential treatment. So the courts here is a very small town here. So everybody knows everybody. And the judge here and the Commonwealth attorney that's now, several years ago, they were puzzled. They was like, we don't even know why you're on a registry. You should have never been here. The Commonwealth attorney wrote a letter on my behalf to the schools. This woman is not violent. She's not a threat to children. This is not what it is. But unfortunately, in Virginia, the judge has no discretionary rule in his own courtroom. So even though the judge wanted to give me relief, he couldn't do it because the legislators have the bar set so high that a judge doesn't have any say so. And I understand the legislators' point in some aspects. We truly need to know who those people are riding around in white vans or hiding in bushes, jumping out to steal our children, to harm our children. But to place someone so frivolously on a registry for such offense as mine and others that I know of in Virginia is no safety for the community. The red dot on the map does no good.
No.
So.
Totally agree. I just want the listeners to be clear that you recognize that so that they recognize the reason that you were on the sex offender registry is because of that 2 or 3 month time period.
That's correct.
That's the whole reason.
Yep.
Everything that you did to report, everything that others did to report, everything that your sister did to report, none of that counted.
Nope.
You're the one on the registry.
Well, and the lady who offended against my
Oh yeah,
son.
of course, the lady who offended.
Yeah.
But I mean of the
And
people who knew
yes.
about it.
Yeah.
You're the only one who it
Yes.
came back on. Yeah.
Yep. And at the time, I want this to be crystal clear too, because this is something that the judge here now said he'll never let it happen in his courtroom. So way back 23 years ago, I had an attorney who was fresh out of law school.
Mm-hmm.
She never told me that I was going on a sex offender registry. She never told me I'd have a requirement. Why? Because she didn't know and I didn't know. So I go to prison. 30 days prior to my release, they come and get me and they say, come on, you got to go with us. We've got some paperwork. And I thought it was a normal part of getting out of prison. I didn't know any better. So I go with them down there and then they tell me then, we're taking all these pictures and palm prints and they say, you're going to be on a violent sex offender registry. I said, no, not me. I don't have anything like that. And I refused to sign. And so the guy that had me there, he went back to another guy and you could see the windows and I seen him talking to him and it was back there for not long. And then he came back and he said, Miss Davis. And I said, yes. He said, this is in fact you. And he said, either you can sign this paper or you're not going to be released to home. Well, my heart sank,
Of course.
And so I signed it. And when I got back to the dorm, I called my mother and I told my mother, what this horrible mistake. How could this happen that I'm going to be on a violent. Now, there's a difference in the sex offender registry and the violent sex offender registry and Virginia's predatorial registry. And I'm on the VSP. I'm on Virginia's predatorial registry. I'm the worst of the worst. I get the paper that says murder, tier 3 offender.
Oh.
And so my mama said, Tammy, don't worry. Don't be dismayed. When you get out, we'll hire an attorney and we'll get this fixed. Well, that has been almost 22 years ago. And I have blowed every whistle that I can blow. Compliance officer, I just saw him today, matter of fact. And he said, this thing's growing so large. There's been some chatter here about what we can do, to have people like me to have relief. But it's just, they have to come and see me every 90 days. They have to physically lay their eyes on me. Like today, I had to come plumb out of my way from work just to come here so he could see me, get my fingerprints. And so it's just a lot of things where our taxpayers' dollars are going, what you talked about in the beginning, Amanda. Every time I make a change, when I trade a car, when I get an email, when I move, when I get a vacation home, anything that I do, when I get a job, it has to be re-registration. And if I don't do that, that's a class 6 felony and it can and will put me back in prison for a long period of time, possibly the time that was suspended. And I got 19 years and 8 months probation out of all of the plea agreement. That's going back to that plea agreement that I told you about. I know I'm going everywhere. Never nowhere did I know I had a plea agreement to sign up for this registry. If I'd have known this from the day that I signed that plea agreement, I would not have signed it. I would have never signed up for this. So that's it.
So how does this not only affect you, Tammy, but how's this affecting your family, grandkids,
Well, I'm just going to be brief with that. So one of my grandsons had to be put on stand here in Grayson County to talk about how he felt about not having a parent. So I have 3 grandchildren and the parents are in and out of prison or drug addiction. And I've been clean, by the way, for 21 years. May the 25th will be 22 years I've been clean.
Congratulations.
Well,
congratulations.
Thank you. And
I've been clean and sober for 50 years next week.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I will say this. I do give a lot of credit to my sheriff's department for arresting me and locking me up because I was doing what they call meth now. Back then it was called crank. If they hadn't done that, I could probably be in a grave or still under the influence. And so I'm thankful that they arrested me and I did go to the Department of Corrections and I did exactly what it's called, Department of Corrections. When I got in those gates, I was focused on getting home, doing programs and getting myself out. But how did it affect my children? I couldn't go to graduation ceremonies. I couldn't go to parent-teacher lunch. I couldn't go to grandma's lunch. I couldn't go to soccer balls. I couldn't go to football fields. So the collateral consequences has affected my children. They feel isolated. A lot of times when I was married, and I do believe the reason my marriage dissolved is because a lot of the stress of the registry, because I could never let it go. And my husband was a correctional officer, so you know how that's going to work.
Right.
And so it bared on him heavily. But they would go out to events without me. When he could, but when there was an event where I couldn't go, my children were left out, or they had to go by themselves, unattended, unsupervised, and I wouldn't allow that at certain ages. So for me, it was kind of like, should I let my child go at 12, or should I accompany my child? Because what happens if something happens to my child and he's 10, 12, 14, even now,
Mm-hmm.
So I've got one graduating. He'll be 18. I've had him since he was 3. So he's graduating next month.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
And it's not just with that. So it's not just with schools. It's with churches. It's with parks. It's with a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So it affects the whole family, including my mother, my father, my sister, my family. When they're going to Walt Disney World, when they're going to Dollywood, when they're going to places that registrants are not allowed, I usually exclude myself. A lot of times I just let my kids go, and they've got accustomed to doing that, but it hurts them.
I'm sure it does, because they would like you to be along.
Yes.
And you have your grandchild now in your home?
3 of them. I have one who's graduating the 25th of next month. He'll be 18 this Saturday and graduating next month. I have a 14-year-old who has intellectual disabilities. He's in the middle school. And then I have will be 10-year-old in July. I got him when he was 18 months old. He goes to the elementary school here, and they're all very bright boys, passing grades. They do well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I will say this, I do have a very supportive family. And I have been able to earn the respect of my community in certain ways that I choose not to talk here today. But there are things that I can do with my children. I just have to take certain precautions, and I have certain requirements of things that I have to do in order to be able to go to a graduation ceremony.
Sure. And yet you're still on the registry.
That's correct.
See, and Tammy's not alone. There's many people all across the United States that they never even committed any type of a crime of sexual nature. You could be put on a registry for just attempting and never actually do anything sexual and get on these registries. And for lifetime, so many of our states now have a lifetime registry. And many of the states with the lifetime, there is no getting off. Thankfully, here in Iowa, we do have a way after 5 years. If you have a lifetime here in Iowa, after 5 years, you can petition the court. But of course, that costs even more money to hire an attorney. There's no guarantee it's even going to work. It's just a lot of collateral damage for people that are on the registry. And one thing I know we will do once this video gets up, Sue, is I will send you the link for Tammy's change.org so the viewers can check it out. They can see her story, and they can sign this petition that we have going for her right now.
Yeah. Okay.
And we are starting to get, like she said, there is a little bit of a talk. She has been receiving some, information. It's not been good, but at least we know it's doing a little bit of good. And our goal is to get Tammy off the registry. There's no reason why she needs, and her family needs, to go through this any longer.
Thank you, Amanda.
And thank you very much, Tammy. I applaud you for being brave enough to tell your story yet again. And certainly my heart goes out to you, given the stress that this must have caused to you and your family. And congratulations on being sober. Boy, if that isn't the crux of the whole thing, I'll tell you what. That is the crux of the whole thing.
It's wonderful. And I have a counselor here. Some people may say counseling is not good, But I say counseling is wonderful, because if it hadn't have been for my wonderful counselor who's heard all of my hurdles, from even having going to my peer-to-peer recovery specialist and getting my training and to get my hours and to get an office job, only to be told that, you can't be hired at this facility now because we see children here. So that was like, I can't tell you at the times my heart has been broke, and that it really hurt deep. Like, there's deep scar in there. So I have to have counseling to be able to get by the PTSD and the stress of this. And, one of the things I too want to point out is this same registry that is supposed to protect children. I think there's 200,000 children in the United States on the registry, some as young as 5 years old. I don't understand a registry that's supposed to protect children that puts children on the registry. It makes no sense to me.
And I think that's one of the other things that Amanda was going to talk about today is children.
Yeah. So, I mean, you brought that up, Tammy. Just less than a year ago, I heard about this boy who's 14 years old. He got involved with the criminal justice system at age 12 in the state of Illinois. The judge in juvenile courts in Illinois said, get your help, get your treatment. As long as you stay good till you're 18, we're just going to squash this. Starts going through therapy. Family went through therapy. The victim went through therapy. They did all this restorative justice, behavior. Everybody was looking forward to moving on with their lives. And he decides to move over to Iowa to live with his mother. One day, the mother gets a knock on her door from the Scott County Sheriff's Department, threatening to arrest her for child endangerment because she did not take her 14-year-old son down to the Iowa Sex Offender Registry. And the mom's like, we were told by the judge in Illinois that he would not be on the registry. And they're like, well, here in Iowa, we want to put him on the registry. So once again, a judge in Illinois says this person does not need to be on the registry. There's no reason for it, but he moves to Iowa, and Iowa automatically puts him on the registry.
So I think what you're saying is we need, in your opinion, we need more consistency among the states. That there needs to be some respect of consistent listening to the rules. The thing about that is, I mean, the glitch in that is if somebody is on the registry in Iowa and then they move to Illinois and Illinois doesn't put them on the registry, Iowa would say, well, you should have paid attention to what we said. We had them on the registry for a reason.
Right.
So that's one of those that cuts both ways. But if there was some sort of national consistency about the reasons for the registry and the actual criteria for the registry, instead of this vague information like Tammy was speaking to earlier about what is an appropriate amount of time and why doesn't it count that 4 people did report and she didn't. So why is she the one on the registry? I mean, the consistency is not there. There's not any kind of basic rule for the registry. It's very, very vague in a lot of ways. It's what maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that seems to me that's what I hear you saying.
I do want to say this. So there is something that is in place. So the federal government, which has, SORNA, in their reading of the passage of the law, it dictates to the state that no one should be held on a lifetime registry, and most people should only have a 10 or 15-year requirement. But each state, like Virginia, has its own guidelines, and Florida and Illinois and Iowa. So they disregard what the federal government says, yet we want to be federally funded by the government to the state to keep our registries going.
Good point. Good point.
Good
And
point.
Stu, here's another situation. So if Tammy would get off the registry or myself would get off the registry in Iowa, there is some states that said even if you've done your time and you've gotten off of your registry in your state, if you come to our state, we're going to put you on our state.
Mm-hmm.
So you've done everything legally in your state to clear your name and clear your record. And you move to some of these states and they'll put you on their registry.
Mm-hmm.
I have friends that are going through that. One guy in particular who's fighting the courts right now. Kentucky let him off. He moved to North Carolina. North Carolina put him on. He hired an attorney. He won. Got off in North Carolina. Came to Virginia. Virginia put him on, and he's in a battle with Virginia right now.
Yeah. We get calls all the time. People are asking, I want to move out of Iowa. Where do you suggest I go? And there's very few states that I can tell them. I do know the state of Washington is one.
Yes.
So if you get done and get off of your state's registry and you move to Washington, you will not get on their registry as long as you are not on your state's registry. And there's only about a handful of states in the United States that do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sad because you've done everything you're supposed to do. How are you supposed to move on in your life if this is always going to be there?
And so inconsistent
Yes.
from state to state. So inconsistent. I mean, like you said earlier, there are people who, that one 14-year-old boy and his mother who had no idea that he would have to register in Iowa, even though he didn't. He was done in Illinois.
This is another question for people who have a lifetime requirement. And I'm just, just throwing this out there. Where is the opportunity to heal? Where is the opportunity to heal when every time you turn around, you've got to remember that you have to do this or you have to do that? It's like pouring salt in an open wound. It has been for almost 20 years. And I'm not whining and complaining because I've been a successful woman because I've pushed forward. And I've not let what set out to defy me tear me down. I've kept on pushing, and I'm going to keep pushing.
Right.
And, if I may not see change in my lifetime, but for the next generation, I certainly hope that there could be some kind of change with how this whole system works.
And yes, yes. And I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you saying that. That it is like rubbing salt in a wound.
Just, it just gives you no opportunity to heal. And, this here is myth, but I think I've looked it up and I can't really get the facts. And I asked my compliance officer about it, but it is rumored here in Virginia that we have a supplemental registry. Now, that's a fact. There is a supplemental registry. And what that supplemental registry is, it puts people who are deceased on it. So oftentimes when people are deceased, the trooper has to go through a process to see if this person is deceased. So even when you're dead in Virginia, there's a supplemental registry that they can go to make sure that you are actually in the ground and that you're John Doe, So I just feel that that's another waste of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And the turmoil that causes the family.
Yes. Yes.
The ones who are left.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, this is something. So, with me raising grandchildren and being on this side of the fence and thinking about who's going to harm my children. Mm-hmm. So I too would say, oh my goodness, and if I hadn't known about this registry like I do now, I would have been looking at those red dots like, oh, everybody's right. This big, huge, hairy monster. But now that I know that there's people even in Virginia for urinating in public, I have a guy that I'm pretty close with. He was about 18 or 19 with a bunch of college kids, and he urinated at a beach in public, which was totally wrong, right? Totally wrong. And he should have been charged, and he was charged, but now he's on a lifetime registry for that. Right. And his was retroactive, so he was supposed to get off at a certain period of time. The law changed, and it threw him in a category, and bundled him up. But I just, I can't say it enough, having children and knowing who the monster is. Because if you look at the statistics, statistically speaking, I think about 92% of people knew their attacker. It was their preacher,
Right.
it was their brother, it was
Yep.
their daddy, it was their mother,
Right.
it was somebody known to them. The stranger
Right.
danger myth is very small. And they say that we have the highest recidivism rate at 67%. And the reason we have that high recidivism rate is not because we reoffend, it's because we fail to keep up with the compliance of our email, our cars, all of these is what they call recidivism when you look at the
Right.
computer. So,
Right. And that's a very important point.
yes,
That's the same way that goes across the board with people who've been in prison.
yes. I've met very few people that was actually a recidivist with a child. Like they reoffended with a child. I've met two along my way, and I'm thinking, buddy, I'm surprised you're even out on the streets at this point. Because here I am over here, not saying poor old pitiful me, but I just didn't understand how someone who really truly offended with a child and then reoffended could have the opportunity to not even be on the registry. And that is a fact. I can't call that person's name here today, but it's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very heartbreaking to hear that we do have those people who've harmed children. And listen, I would never harm a child, even though I harmed children in different ways when I was in my addiction by, leaving my kids at home with drugs and alcohol. That was wrong. It was wrong, clearly wrong. I feel like that there needs to be a line to where, you could say, hey, this guy over here, or hey, this lady over here, they've been doing this for 20 years and they've obeyed all the laws. It's time we cut them loose.
I do. I do.
So
Yeah, I am a big subscriber to the statement by Brian Stevenson that everybody is better than the worst thing they've done, and everybody's worse than the best thing they've done, and nobody should be punished for the rest of their life for the worst thing that they've done.
wear the scarlet letter, you know what that is, right?
Yeah, I do. Yep, I do.
So, Tammy, we're talking about stats. So, just about a year ago, there's been a study in Missouri. They looked at all the women on the registry from the beginning of the registry in 1995 in the state of Missouri. They found over 561 women, I believe was the number. Only one during this whole time has ever reoffended. Out of over 500, only one has reoffended with a child. Two of them did reoffend with another adult, and that was sodomy in the state.
I wish I could send up firecrackers and say wow to you, but that's not surprising because it's true. Statistics again has proven that we as individuals, as women, it's a very low recidivism rate there.
Yeah.
Well, once again, Tammy, thank you very much for all of your comments and for all of your knowledge. It's obvious that you have done your homework and you know what's up in Virginia. And yeah, and I have a lot of respect for anybody who sticks with it and doesn't fold under the pressure.
It's hard.
Yep, that's right. It's very hard. It's very hard. That's what it takes, though. I mean, that's what it takes. That's what it takes.
I have often said, and I want to put this in there because if somebody listens to the whole podcast, I want them to hear this. So I have written out the Tammy L bill, and we don't even have to call it the Tammy L bill. We can call it whatever bill. But that bill right there would give judges discretionary rule in Virginia to say, hey, this person's been on there for so long, let's take them off. And all I need is a sponsor, a legislator, a senator, or somebody says, hey, that might be a good idea. That woman there, I've listened to her case. I've looked at her records. I've seen what she's saying is the truth. And, it's time that we cut her loose, or maybe someone else that the judge might say, hey, they're 95 or 99. They're in the nursing home. They can't walk, So the Tammy L bill, I have it handy dandy and ready.
All right.
Is there anything like that, Amanda, in Iowa, or is there any movement toward a bill to reform the sex offender registry?
The only talk I've heard recently, and this was just the other day when I heard it, was there is talk about looking at the nursing home, and
Yeah.
it all had to do with the end of life care and stuff like
Mhm.
that.
Right.
It was a more broader one, but it did include those, especially on the registry. Having an opportunity for them to go into a nursing home when they need to.
Yeah, Virginia's one of those states too. We can't go in nursing homes when we get to, yeah, we're not allowed.
Yeah,
But
I
I
did not
have been
know
working.
that. I did not know that until tonight.
Yes.
That you couldn't
Yep.
go into a nursing home.
Yep.
And my very first thought, which I expressed, was, well, what if somebody doesn't have family? Then what?
Well, this is what they live at the corner of Watermelon and Cantaloupe, and they live there helplessly, or they go back into state's care. Just exactly what Amanda said, and I've heard of several situations where people did go back into state's care, and they put them in a pod called SCORE. So you have Delta, Charlie, SCORE, and SCORE pod is people that are handicapped, mentally incapable, or just at the end of life.
Yep.
Mhm.
We have some of them units here in Iowa.
Yeah.
We have our special needs, and we do
Yes.
have those that need the special care, because they can't take care of themselves.
Well, being the wife of a correctional officer, former, I got to hear about SCORE, Charlie, Delta, Bravo. I got to hear all of those names. And so I kindly know what to expect in certain buildings, in
Mhm.
the institutions.
And I just want to thank you also, Tammy, for taking this opportunity to talk to us here in Iowa. It kind of shows us that, we're a little state, but this is happening all over the United States. There is so many individuals who do not need to be on the sex offender registry. They've been on there for many, many years. We had a guy who was 11 years old who's been talking with us at Iowans Unafraid about what can he do. He's been on the registry for 20 some years and cannot get off.
Amanda,
He's not 11 now.
No,
Been
he's
on
not
since
11. No, he was 11 when they got
he was
when it
11 when it
started.
happened.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amanda, did I hear you correctly when you said that your state, you have to come out of prison to be on the registry?
Yes. You don't
Okay.
get your time does not start until you are released.
Well, get this one. Guess how Virginia is? You're already on the registry, even if you're doing a life sentence. Your address is 6900 Atmore Drive, Richmond, Virginia. We're registering people that's got life sentences on the registry in Virginia who's in prison. Facts.
That's crazy.
I know, but it's true. They're not even out here in society. They're locked up with a bunch of men or women, and we're registering them.
Are they housed in a special area?
No, they're housed all over Virginia.
They're out with, but they're how? But I mean, in their institution, are they
no
in general population?
General pop, unless they ask for protective custody, and oftentimes that happens in Virginia because it's the same way inside there that it is out here.
Sure, there's a different stigma.
Yeah, they're you're treated differently by staff and by other
Right.
incarcerated individuals. You're known as that, and so sometimes you can be treated very different, and I mean harshly, very harsh.
Right.
you know.
Right.
So,
I know how that can be, Tammy, because I actually had a good friend that I knew for almost a dozen years. And when I left Fort Dodge, just about a month after I left Fort Dodge and transferred to another prison, he was brutally murdered. And he was my cellmate. And I'm like, I thank God every day that he got me out of there before that would have happened, because I don't know how my life would have turned out if that would have happened and I was, still his cellmate and somebody come into a cell and brutally murdered him.
yeah. I was very fortunate when I did go to from the jail to the prison. There was a lady that kindly took me under her wing. I'll never forget her. She was a lifer,
Yep.
and we're not going to talk about what she did, but she told me, she said, "Listen," "Listen, sweet cheeks." She said, "One of the things you don't want to do here is talk about your crime." She said, "If anybody asks you, it's not to talk about. Don't talk about your release date. It's not to talk about." She said, "I tell you this because I tell you've got a good heart, because when I come into the institution, here I am, a Southerner from way down here in Virginia, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going way upstate Richmond, and I'm in an area like I don't even know what hit me,
Mm-hmm.
and so, and in an open dorm, and never
Mhm.
being exposed to having to show my body to other people, male and female, because you had the guards, and you didn't have no
Right.
privacy. And so it was very I just can't explain it. I'll never get over it. I will never get over that. And I'll never get over that one. But I made it through it. That's the point. I made
Right.
it through it. And
We don't get over anything. We
no,
get through it.
we get through it. And, when I get those times that, like, there's been times that, I'll be somewhere that I know I have permission to be there, but I'll see somebody in blue, right? And all of a sudden, my heart starts beating real fast, and I'll think, they're looking at me. They got an arrest warrant for me. They're calling me in.
Mm.
And this whole time is based off of my fear
Of
of
course.
not being really necessarily arrested, or being publicly shamed, because God knows that's already happened. But going to prison,
Right.
it's a fearful thing, and
Yeah.
I don't ever
Going
want to go
back
back.
into that. Yes. Going
Yes.
back into that environment. Yes.
Yes, want to try to keep on the straight and narrow as much as I
Yeah.
can.
Yes.
Every 90 days, when I have to go into the sheriff's department, I worry every single time. Like, did I forget something? And
Yes.
just a couple weeks ago, I had to go back to do, because I had to change. I got a different vehicle. So I had to go in there. Even though next month is my 90 days, I had to go in earlier just because I had a different vehicle that I'm driving. And I get in there, and the deputy's like, "Just to let you know, I have another detective here with us. It's a sergeant, and he's going to be joining us today." And my heart rate started racing.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
now
What
have
for?
a
What for? What
backup.
for? Yeah.
I'm like, scared. So as we're going through all the questions, is that it? These are all the internet identifiers. Are there any more? Did you forget? Did you forget? Like, they give you that chance, and then you're thinking, did I do anything in the last month? Did I join a website or something that I have to tell them? Because not everything you have to tell them.
Right.
It's only when you can communicate back and forth, you know, just like here in Iowa, well, our YouTube channels, where I can communicate. I got to register them. If I
Yeah.
can communicate, since
Mhm.
YouTube, I can put comments in
Yes.
the chats. I have to, make YouTube internet identifier.
Yes.
And so I'm always nervous every time I go in there. And I'm not the only one. I hear that from everybody that I talk to here in Iowa. That's their most fearful thing. Or can you imagine you're the wife and you're going, into the sheriff's office with your husband for him to do his thing, and you're wondering, is he going to get back out of that room? Or am I
Right.
going to have to visit him in county jail because he forgot to say something?
Yep.
So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very fearful, and I hate to do this. I want to say this one last statement. I've got to pop to
yep,
my grandson's
you're
tutoring.
good.
So this is one of the things that happened to me recently. I had to make a new email, right?
Yeah.
And in
Mm-hmm.
Virginia, you have a 20-minute window to report any social media or email. 20 minutes. So I called the dispatch and I tell her I need to speak to my compliance officer. I've already sent him a letter, and she was like, or an email, and she was like, and I was sort of in a panic mode, and I said, "Listen, this is important for me because I could go to jail." And I said, "I've got 20 minutes." And she said, "Well, I don't know that that's true." I said, "Ma'am, I know it's true. I've been doing this for 22 years, so I know
Mm-hmm.
we have 20 minutes. Can you please give me your name so I get your badge number? And is this call recorded? Because I want to make sure that I've got all my P's and Q's, at the end
Right.
of the day." And so for them, it's like, we don't know the law, but for us, we study the law to try to keep
Sure.
up with it. We don't get a manual that tells us what we're to do and not do. We just have to keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
But ladies, I would be glad to meet with you all again. I do got to go do tutoring. I pay for that, so I've got to get that reading class in there with my grandson. And thank you for having me here.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
And
again, congratulations.
thank you, and have a nice day, Amanda.
Yes, you too, Tammy.
Bye bye.
Good night.
Her story, it's just amazing.
It is amazing.
I'm glad you took the opportunity to let her give her story, Sue. That means the world to her.
Good.
And I will send you, when we're done here, I will send you the change.org so you can post that when you
Okay.
this out.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Well, people need to know this. I mean, people need to know that the registry, the Sex Offender Registry, is not what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It is not people who have violently harmed children or violently harmed adults. It is a very, very complex and convoluted registry. And folks need to realize and get ready to do something about that. At least all we can do here is raise awareness. And I feel like that's my purpose, is to at least let people know that when you hear the word when you hear somebody is on the sex registry, that does not mean that doesn't even mean that they have committed a crime of a sexual nature.
Like we heard tonight.
It doesn't mean that they have harmed a child.
Yeah.
So if nothing else, that's what I would like people to take away from this, is that being on the sex registry does not need to put the fear of God into you about the person that you hear it about, and you don't need to treat them as if they are going to harm your child. So at any rate.
I want to encourage all your viewers that view this video, please comment. That helps Sue out. That'll help me out. What do you guys want to know more about the registry? Because I got lots of information on the registry, but I want to know from you guys as the public, how can we educate you? Do you have questions or things that you would love to have us talk about the registry? Is there fears that you have living next door to somebody who's on the registry? Let us know in the comment section, because that's very helpful.
It is helpful. That's the purpose of this, is to inform the public about every interview that I do.
Yes.
That's the purpose. And so I really, really want comments. Okay, well, I think it's time to close for this evening. And once again, Amanda, thank you very much for coming back. I very much appreciate that. And we'll talk about another time in the future again.
No problem. Looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, everybody, I'm going to say good night for today. And once again, I'm Sue Hutchins, and I am the founder of Living Beyond the Bars of Iowa. And this particular YouTube channel is a collaboration between Living Beyond the Bars of Iowa and the Iowa Justice Action Network and Iowa Cure. And please comment or email me. My email, I can be reached at my email, which is iowaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. And it's iaprisonperspectives@gmail.com. And I look forward to hearing from you, and let me know if you like this or if you don't like this or how you feel. So thank you very much. And with that, I will say good night.
Good night.